You're on the street.
All right.
Commissioner
Commissioner Forster,
Present.
Lisk,
Present.
Meyer,
Here.
Nelson.
Jeez.
You're muted, but I see you. Petroselli,
Here.
Mayor Clark,
Here.
and Chairperson Montague.
Here.
Puppy dog. And Jennifer's here?
Yes, she is.
Yeah. Now we can hear you yourself.
It looks like our first item of business is the selection of officers. How do we do that?
I move to appoint Chairman Montague as president.
I'll second that. You're willing to serve again?
Yes,
Okay.
Chairperson Montague, did you not read the memo?
I'm looking at I did, but
I read the
looking,
instructions exactly.
I'm looking at the agenda.
Yeah.
So that's why. So I guess then we have a motion and a second, and I've accepted, so we need a roll call vote.
Yes, for
Or
discussion.
can we just ask if anyone disagrees?
Anyone wants to get fired?
I'm not the appointer, it's John. So does anyone disagree with that?
No.
Motion passes unanimously. The next would be the vice chair, and first I'd ask Bill if he's willing to continue to be the vice chair.
They do,
Yes.
for formality, do we need to do that roll call because we did already, sorry.
Technically, we should because Chapman won my bad line, but it did for this, I don't think it's.
But good thought. I think we're okay, but from now on, we need to do both.
We do.
Yeah, because based on our policy, since Jennifer's virtual, we'll need to go one by one. If everyone was in person,
Yeah, that's,
and that may be something we can revisit policy, but that's how it's set up.
Okay,
do you want us to go back and do roll call on
I
that?
think it's fine. Thank you.
Bill,
Thanks, Russ.
are you interested?
Yes.
All right,
I move we appoint. I move we reappoint Bill as vice chair of the planning commission by acclamation, meaning we just all agree it's.
a second.
I'll second.
Then we don't have to have a vote on this.
Right.
Ah, nice work, John. Okay, so nothing has changed there. Those people have been reappointed. Is that for a year?
2.
2 years. All right.
Both offices are for 2 years?
Yes, sir.
It's funny they run concurrent.
So next is a public hearing. And the application is condominium subdivision. The location is town of Ridgway, block 34, lots 13 through 15. The address is 185 North Lena Street, historic business. Firehouse Investment Real Estate LLC, and the owner is also Firehouse Investment Real Estate LLC. And I believe I will now hand that off to TJ.
Excellent. Good evening. Thank you. And you guys are seeing my screen, the presentation?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay, perfect. So, yep, as you mentioned, Chair, what you have in front of you this evening is a condominium subdivision, which is a new subdivision based on the new code that we just went through. So, I'll try to also put it a little bit into perspective as we go through. And also just so that you all know that based on the updated revisions to the code, you all, the planning commission, are the deciding body in this. So this doesn't go to, this isn't a recommendation, this is an approval this evening. So as mentioned, we have the old Firehouse condominium subdivision. You gave a bunch of good info on the background there. So just to go back in time and kind of rehash some of the things that have already gone through a few years ago. It's probably been about 3 or 4 now. There was some parking reductions. There's building height variance. There was needed a conditional use was granted to allow the larger building. And all of that happened. And then we got the building permit in 2022. It was approved in July. And then there was also a replat that was needed to take, or replat lot consolidation to take 2 lots into 1, so that we could issue the building permit. So a lot has happened on this property so far. And that just gets us to, what they're looking to do now is they're condominiumizing the units within, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, what that means, but it's basically creating legal descriptions for each unit inside so that they could sell them separately. And so, the project is 3 stories. There's 6 condo units. We'll get into a little bit, we'll go through each of those in a little bit. 2 for-sale residences on the 3rd floor, 4 rental workforce apartments for rent within one of the units. On the 2nd floor, there's also commercial condos, both on the 1st and 2nd floor. We'll go through each of those. The parking spaces are also condominiumized. That basically means that you get sold a unit plus parking spaces for it. There's a bunch of common areas. And the big part, kind of after reviewing this, what's being proposed in this application is consistent with all the previous approvals, square footages, areas, all that stuff. So that's pretty much the extent of our review, making sure that it is consistent with everything else, and then we make sure that there's covenants and things like that. So for a condo plat, it's a little bit more limited in the review scope. So I wanted to go through each of the units just so that you understood a little bit more and were clear on what was being created. Unit A is on the 1st floor. It's the restaurant and hospitality. It also includes, it has some outdoor space. It's about almost 13,000 square feet, and it's kind of it's that whole ground floor, as you can see. So it's all the area in blue there. Up on the 2nd floor, there are 3 condominium units. The first one being what I have highlighted here in blue is Unit B. It's 1,600 square feet, and it's for a commercial greenhouse. This is where they're intended to grow a lot of the food that's going to be served in the restaurant downstairs. Unit C is 1,400 square feet and is intended to be an office use. Which means that someone, a business could purchase it as an office for an office use. And the last one on the 2nd floor is the workforce housing units, and I want to talk a little bit about it, and hopefully the applicant can give a little bit more detail on this. We have two recommended conditions tied to this that it's hard to see on this, but this area is all condominium D, and there's 1, 2, if you can see my mouse, 3 and 4 individual residences within that would be rented out. So if you will, someone would purchase all 4 units and then rent them out. Preston and I were talking about it a little bit, that the town currently doesn't have a mechanism for like deed restricting rental units or even a condominium in this type of situation. So we do need just some clarification on what that's looking like, who's going to be managing it, if it's actually going to be deeds, or if it's going to be a deed restriction, or if it's going to be covenants, how it's going to work. And so you can see that that's one of the conditions to get some clarification on that prior to recording it. And I believe that if it would be a deed restriction and requiring the town to oversee or administer those deed restrictions, that would have to go to town council for approval. So again, we're just trying to make sure that the intent is clear and that the documentation is in place to be able to implement what that vision is. And then up on the 3rd floor, there's 2 for sale market rate units. One is here. This is unit E, kind of on the lower side, or the bottom side. This is actually the south side of the building. And then this is the last unit F up on the 3rd floor as well. That's 1,900 square foot residential unit, a market rate again. So in the code, we do have the approval criteria. So these are the 3 approval criteria. that you need to find in order to approve a condominium subdivision, and your options for this evening are either to approve with conditions, deny, or to continue if you do want some more information. And with all of that, reviewing it, like I said, it's consistent with all the previous approvals. There are some clerical items on the subdivision plat that we would request to be fixed, and then some of the deed restrictions. So with all of that, staff is recommending approval of the condominium subdivision for old firehouse condominiums with the following conditions. 1, the applicant shall add a note to the plat stating that the 4 apartments in condo unit D shall be reserved for workforce housing for a period of not less than 20 years. This note or a second note shall also identify the reception number of the deed restrictions applicable to these units. 2, the applicant shall confirm to the satisfaction of town staff that the deed restrictions applicable to condo unit D have been recorded with the Uray County Clerk and Recorder's Office prior to the recording of the condominium subdivision plat. And 3, that the outstanding comments identified in the planning review letter dated January 25th, 2024 shall be adequately addressed prior to the condominium subdivision plat being recorded with the Uray County Clerk and Recorder's Office, and that was included in your packet. So with that, there's the recommended motion tying into that code section 752H3. And then we also have some alternative motions if you'd like, and with that I'd be happy to answer any questions or go back, and I think the applicant or the owner is there hopefully to give a little bit of a presentation as well. So I'll be quiet now.
Thanks, TJ. Does anyone have any questions based on that?
Yeah, I do. TJ, help me remember, it seems that there is a size limitation on quote unquote workforce housing, square footage wise, similar to an ADU. Do you happen to remember that number off the top of your head?
450. No, it's bigger.
Is it? Yeah, it's pretty small. Is that right?
I remember 450, I could be wrong, for workforce housing.
For workforce housing, it's a tiny number. And I'm saying that these are like 856 roughly.
I remember because I thought it was way too small.
Yeah, and so the only thing I would want is not to have a technical hang up on whether we're calling this workforce housing.
These are about, what I see is about 750 square feet, 4 units of 3,500, maybe 800 square feet.
850, if they're all the same size, they're 856, yeah.
So they're 600. Oh, never mind, that it doesn't include the secondary room. So yeah, I think it's a good catch, Russ, that we don't want to get it caught up in a technicality, and we can call it kind of whatever it is. It doesn't need to be workforce housing. It's for local workforce, if you will. So it's a good point, and we'll just change the terminology, assuming that everybody's okay with that, to make sure that it just doesn't get caught up on a technicality.
That sounds good to me.
We may also want to note that whatever that 450 is designated, that's something we should look at if we're already having to work around it.
Is that what it is, DJ? And where is that if that's the case? Because I don't remember this at all.
I talked about it in the revised code that we went through, but previous to that, we had touched on it somewhere. I remember it something like 470 or it's a small.
I don't know where I read it, but I read it and I can remember it standing out because I thought it was way too small.
Yeah, that is too small.
So
DJ, do you know?
we have a definition for employee housing. That's where the 450 square foot.
Maybe that's what
And that's a maximum or a minimum?
A dwelling unit that contains no more than 450 square feet of gross floor area, located within the same structure as a non-residential use and above adjacent.
Yeah.
Or behind.
So I know where that came from. That's because there was housing proposed in the industrial zone.
Right.
Where we wanted to allow, say, a wood shop or a machinist to be able to hire employees and house them on the second floor or third floor. And that, I think that number is probably workable for that. It could be larger. So this isn't what we're talking.
I think it should be larger, but that's not the subject. I have a question for TJ. When it's appropriate.
If I can Sorry, real quick. Do we
Yeah,
also have a definition for workforce housing?
Yeah,
Is that what you were gonna say, TJ?
yep, that is. So go ahead, Preston.
You wanna read it?
Sure.
No, I got
So,
it. Housing that is available for purchase or rent on terms that are affordable to households earning between 80% and 120% of area median income, as determined by HUD, published annually for the county. A little more details on the definition, but
That was workforce housing, you said?
that's work.
So it probably is named appropriately then.
What's that?
That
Yeah.
probably is the
Yeah,
right.
it is.
That would be.
I had confused the employee.
No, but you roughly track those.
And there's no size limit in the workforce housing definition.
No, but there's.
correct.
Period.
There's AMI.
So there's income and working criteria.
Right.
And then what is the square footage for an ADU?
800 living space.
That's what I was thinking of, okay.
And we could put a pin in the idea that maybe we want to change the employee housing number to a higher number at some point, but that's not
Well, we're
relevant.
gonna be talking about that later tonight, maybe.
Yeah,
I've got a question for TJ. So, I read this and I was a little bit confused that unit, D is, the workforce housing. And it's one unit, but it's really 4 units, correct? And I saw that and so in my, empty brain, I was thinking, well, how can it be 4 and still be 1, or how can it be 1 and still be 4? And in the marketplace, it's nicer to have 4 than 3, or nicer to have 4 than 2. So I'm wondering if somehow walls don't get torn out 15 years from now, we end up with 2 units. Or if that should be part of the, I'll be more, personally, I would be more concerned about losing units than being part of the AMI.
it says 20 years, that this would stand for 20 years.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there could be a modification of the building, could be a fire in the building, who knows what happens, things change. So I think the number 4, I was very impressed by that number. It's obviously a world-class building. And to have 4 livable workforce units in that building is first class. And I think I personally would like it to stay as part of the restriction and not get changed.
Mike,
Mhm, and I,
go ahead, TJ, but
yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, and that's what the one of the conditions is for to when we were talking about this with Patrick, the owner, we were scratching our heads, and so this is certainly one of those things. It's certainly, it's being touted as 4 units for workforce, year-round workforce in Ridgway, and I think it's the town's position. It says that's what we want, and we want that for as long as possible. As we, and one of the things that Preston and I were talking about, if it falls into the town's affordable housing kind of policies, that means in perpetuity. So there's going to be some negotiation, some discussion on that this might not be, full on town affordable housing deed restriction type thing, but maybe we can get some. And to your point, Jack, we can certainly say, hey, this needs to stay 4. Now, there's going to be building permits and things like that that would be required, and I'm not necessarily solving or putting the concerns at ease, but what we have right now is what we're being sold, if you will, and for the evaluation, and certainly can add conditions as needed.
Well, when I read it, I just said, wow, we got 4 units there. I was very impressed with that number.
Yeah.
And I just said, I can't believe that y'all pulled that off. So I think we should protect the number.
Are they meant to be sold as 1 or 4?
I don't think it's.
So
The
Okay, so the owner is going to retain, the builder is going to retain ownership?
well, I think that's to be determined. The way it reads right now, and because the public hearing, we have to follow protocol there.
Yeah,
But the way I'm hearing it, and TJ, correct me or Preston if I'm wrong, is that because they're meant to be rented, they're going to be sold as one chunk.
Of 4 units.
4 units sold as one chunk that then whoever buys it, whether the the project builder maintains ownership or someone else will then rent those out following some deed restriction that they're gonna create, I see. My question was gonna be, why go through that complication? Why not sell them each individually? As individual condos that are then rentable, but maybe there's some rationale. I think we need to just, when we're done with our questions to TJ and Preston, we can give Patrick an opportunity
That's my question,
to
yeah.
respond.
I mean, I like it at 4 because I think it'll stay better rentals, but I don't.
Who said it was gonna change from 4?
I said it could. I wanted to be a
No.
fiction that it.
I think the condition
Okay, that's what I was
can
asking.
protect that. At least I'm trusting that Platinum can be written in such a way that it requires that 4 separate rentals be deed restricted for at least 20 years. I still have a question up to 20 years too. We need to deal with that. The project, yeah.
So do we need to open the public hearing to hear from the applicant?
Not the public hearing, but it's the applicant's turn to.
Okay,
Yeah, public comment.
Patrick?
Turn.
Yeah, we're ready. You're up.
Nice to see you all again.
Welcome.
And there are some new members too, so nice to meet the new planning commissioners. Should we begin by just addressing the conversation that just took place?
Up to you. That's up to you. You can give us a presentation if you want, but you can also just.
I really didn't plan to come give a presentation, given that all of that is contained within the application. I had great support from Preston and TJ since the month of November, when I said, hey, I'd really like to be on the November meeting. A little did I know it was going to take a lot of work, and it was really helpful to get all that support. With respect to condo D, it's not unusual at all in commercial real estate for apartments to be viewed as commercial facilities. From the very beginning of this project, I thought having affordable housing, and I began to start using the term workforce housing because in my mind, I would try to accommodate our needs first in this unusual mixed-use project, and then move to residents of the town, particularly municipal employees, and fire, police, second, and after that, free market. But to dedicate 4 out of the 6 residential or residences that are being developed in the mixed-use project, I was in favor of doing that right from the beginning, because as a developer, I am not doing this project necessarily to enhance my own financial being. It was really intended to be a significant project that would be welcomed by the community and would be a significant contribution and addition to the community. So working from there, I felt from the very beginning I had an obligation to develop affordable housing within my project that would benefit my businesses there. So my firm intent is to keep those 4 units in place. That's why we made it one condominium. There's a second reason. As a small part of my financing package, I received a $2+ million Colorado CPACE loan for green building projects, in support of green building projects. They do not underwrite condominiums, pure condominium, residential at-market condominiums. So that is why the 2 residential units on the top are not, they're not part of the loan. Only the infrastructure and the core and shell costs associated with that infrastructure for the first 2 floors is included in the loan with CPACE. And CPACE will be represented on the final plat. But they because we were making it into a singular condo that would have to remain for the 20 years. At least that portion of it is nailed down for the next 20 years. I plan to be here 20 years from now. Whoa, it's an interesting thought. But if it ever sold, it would sell with that deed restriction in place. And those units are well equipped. It's a big investment in those units. And I'd be surprised if somebody would want to redrigger them. And it just wouldn't really convert to a singular residence very well, I don't think. But anyway, there is that issue that demising walls within could change, but that's not my plan.
And then the 20-year thing is based on that loan you received. That's where the 20 years came from.
Yeah, I was prepared to meet whatever the town requirement was for affordable housing.
And so that can't change for 20 years.
I cannot change for 20 years. It too will be acknowledged. I don't know if it's going to be lien. It is not a lien. It's a deed restriction. And it will be like other covenants that appear. I mean, some of the covenants go back to, if someone comes a calling on the mining claims, those are still deed restrictions in the HBD. So the other thing I'd like to say as well is that with respect to all the condominiums, the only contemplated sale up front right now is to deliver my neighbor's unit on the 3rd floor. That's condo F. And I will be living next door in condo E, because that was my deal with him, is he was exchanging his land for a base building constructed condominium of 1,150 square feet, I think is what the actual contract was for. So I need to deliver that condo unit to him. His plan is long-term rentals for a couple of years, and then he plans to retire there with his wife when he's ready to sell his property in northern Ridgway. So other than that, my intent with each of the components is, yes, to retain the saleability of each of the commercial condominiums, but my intent is to operate for the next 5 to 7 to 10 years or longer with the whole complex. There'll probably be a refinance somewhere along the way, but I do not intend to sell until the businesses are mature, and probably not even then, because I'm living there, or I plan to live there.
Thanks for the insight.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if there are other questions, but or questions from what I had to say in my answers, if anything remains unclear. But I would venture to say that those apartments will always be full. And I'd be surprised if someone went in and wanted to re-demise that square footage. I'd be surprised. But Jack's been in real estate a long time as well. He knows things change.
I don't really care about the interior walls. I think it was misunderstood. I just care about the number of units. So I was very impressed that there were 4 units in that building. And I was shocked that you were,
I felt that
that's
was,
been able to put 4 units, to squeeze 4 units in there.
Thanks for leading by example.
thank you.
I said, thanks for leading by example.
That was part of the reason to do it at that time, and I still think it's a good rationale for what I did.
So,
I think it's going to serve me well.
sorry, the comment that came up earlier was, would you be willing to make them workforce housing in perpetuity?
20 years.
Does it more than the 20 years?
More than the 20 years. I'd rather not, quite frankly. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'll be 91 years old when it expires. So that's up to the town of Ridgway if it wants to. I mean, if you're looking for me to voluntarily extend it, I think 20 years is long enough. That would be my initial answer, Pam.
I think, speaking for myself, I always like to see when we manage to get workforce housing with these restrictions attached in the town, it's always hard to see them sunset. But it would be the first time Jack did a development years ago where they were 10-year sunsets, and
It would be the first time.
Been there now 25 years.
yeah. I mean, there's, I guess maybe that would be. I mean, this is just coming to mind in terms of that we're still talking about what the plat notes will actually say. That one of the factors of features of Jack's was that as long as somebody stayed there. Now that these were ownership, so that's different. But if someone stayed there for 10 years, the deed restriction sunset. If they sold before 10 years was out, it restarted. The 10 years restarted, but that doesn't apply to these because they're not going to be for sale, they're rent, right?
They will be,
So,
as long as they're within condo D in those first 20 years, cannot be.
so I mean, can we force the issue and ask Mr. O'Leary to require Mr. O'Leary to make it more than 20 years? I think we probably could. I think that's for us to discuss.
Would that be?
I think we would need to offer something, or there'd have to be I don't think we can just throw that out there. I mean, is that written somewhere in our
Well,
code?
it's,
No, I will say, as many ski towns as I've lived in, as soon as they become market rate, those occupants end up moving out of town because they can't find a place to live. I mean, I've just seen it over and over again. The price goes up because either the buildings sell and the 20 years is up, and boom, they are no longer affordable.
I built 10 units and the deed restriction turned off in 10 years, and I just did a calculation. I did 6 of those 10 still are the original buyers in those houses. And those deed restrictions have now been gone for almost 15 years, at least 12 years. So I think
that's different because they were for sale, but
I believe that 20 years is plenty. I think that he's being very generous with that. I think it's unrealistic to ask for more than 20 at a time.
At this point, I mean, I think it's an agreement you would have had to make at the beginning. I think it'd be really hard to say, thanks for being so generous, but we want more.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm gonna hand up, but that public comment's not open yet. Jennifer, hang on. Yeah, I mean, I don't hope I didn't sound too aggressive in saying that. I mean, in my experience at the planning commission level, we can ask for things. We can say, we'd really like you to make this more than 20 years. You're right, we can't require it, but we can say we feel really strongly that you should extend it more than 20 years. I just think it's a good thing to discuss, because as Jennifer points out, as Pam points out, sorry, as soon as that 20 years is up, there's no doubt in my mind that they will no longer be affordable. There's no such thing as market rate affordable anymore in the town where everything costs $1 million.
I think the thing would be that you'd have to come up with something, offer something, or first right of refusal, town could buy them for affordable housing, something like that. I don't think you can just be like.
So just out of curiosity, if it actually fits into the employee housing or workforce housing, as workforce housing, I heard that there's an AMI constraint on that. So we say that goes away at the end of 20 years?
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
The covenant goes away.
Okay. All right.
If it changes, I probably have to get approval, even though it's increasing the years, I'd have to get approval from Impact Development Fund is who I worked with on all the agreements associated with the community revitalization grant that we received. So it was their requirement to do the 20 years, and I thought, I'll be 91, I can do that.
May we all
96, 101, the other thing that I become concerned about is that revenue, even though it's restricted for the 20 years, that revenue will be part of any refinancing of the project. And I've done a lot of things within within my mixed-use development that aren't particularly economic, and the workforce housing was one of those components. And so I see that as being an issue on placing encumbrances on others' future ability to finance the project at some point in time in the future. But it does leave the opportunity to sell the condominium unit on its own. So if there was some interest on the part of the town or something, I'd like to see it remain affordable housing.
But I mean, to me, the bottom line is that in a town like Ridgway that's becoming more and more like a resort town, even though we're not a resort town, the property values have gotten to the point where anytime we can get workforce housing with a deed restriction on it that will allow less well-off people to remain in town and work in local businesses and such, we need to hold on to it as long as we can. To me, that's the most important thing. So how we do that, maybe it's a plat note that says we want to talk about renegotiating that after 15 years. Maybe look at it then, see where we're at. But I think there needs to be some way to try and have these remain affordable as long as possible. Bill, you wanted to?
Well, I was just gonna say, this gives us, I mean, this discussion I think is valuable. I tend to agree with Jack that I was impressed that Mr. O'Leary did 4 to begin with.
Totally agree.
And bearing that in mind, in the future, when we need to say, hold people's feet to the fire because they want to have like 1 or maybe 2 units, that may be the time at which to say, okay, it's got to be in perpetuity. I think that I sort of feel like this is more of an ask than I think this situation calls for.
I agree with Bill.
So.
Did you have something?
I did, yeah, thank you.
And then I have a question for TJ after that.
Piggybacking on what everyone was just saying, this is a really unique opportunity. It's not every day that someone comes before the town and says, "I've got some workforce housing units for you." So I would just tread carefully under some caution, because certainly the application could be a complete 180 and just make the remaining units market rate. There was nothing that required these units to be workforce housing. So just keep that in mind. The other thing I want to say is, and I haven't wrapped my head around this entirely, there's going to need to be a mechanism, and TJ may have already mentioned it, on the plat or somewhere for the town to track these units, right? It's been touted this way. It's going to be imperative for the town to make sure that if that unit D is sold, that whoever it's sold to honors those. We keep using the word deed restriction, but honors those covenants, honors the workforce housing criteria and restriction as part of those 4 units. And I'm very much used to individual for sale units being single family homes or other units being formally deed restricted and being able to track those. This is a whole different kind of deal. So I'm not quite sure what that might look like, but I think that's what TJ was getting at with some of these conditions. But I think after this evening, we'll have to work with you, Patrick, to kind of figure out just
Okay.
how we can all.
Well, every year I have to present an annual budget for condominium D for the units themselves, and I have to report, what the prior year's rentals were, and make sure that they all meet the metrics of CHFA.
Nice.
So I'm also, I would say also, hopefully to give a little more long-term reassurance, I am not on the board of Home Trust of Uray County, but I've been a big supporter from the beginning of the Home Trust. And so I may in fact turn to them as a manager. And we haven't had discussions along those lines, but they are interested, and I have enough balls in the air that taking that off my shoulders might be a really good thing from the.
Well,
from the
then maybe
start.
they would have the opportunity in 20 years to purchase it.
Yeah,
I,
You know, I don't know how that works, but
they would have the inside rail.
Yeah.
If I was still cognizant at 91.
my question to TJ was gonna be how many affordable units, workforce units were required for this development? And I think Preston already answered it, none.
Based on my understanding, I said none, but TJ, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that is correct. The town at this current time, at least when this was submitted, there were no requirements for affordable housing or
I think it's
workforce housing.
Extremely important to show respect to the builder who went ahead and did some and not try to strong arm him and say, oh, we're gonna make you do
But
this or
that's-
that.
but that's why
I
I
don't, I'm
agree.
not feeling strong on it.
Okay,
Thank
That's
you,
why
thank you, Will.
I'm agreeing with you about, is it, if and when it goes up for sale, is it offered to the housing trust? Is it offered to the town, before a commercial buyer?
Right, a right-
Indeed,
Some sort of like almost right of first.
Yeah,
refusal to the-
exactly.
To the home trust.
I'm just
That's
trying
not a bad idea.
I'm just trying to protect
Yeah,
rights.
yeah,
Housing. I'm
and-
not
and-
trying to put anything,
To be,
right,
to be perfectly clear, if I'm appearing greedy and overly, aggressive about this, I apologize, that's not my intent. Patrick and I.
I'm not
know
feeling-
well enough that,
He gets that.
it's my passion for the future of this town that drives my interest here. I want this town to be diverse
Right.
and as broad spectrum economically as possible, and it's only things like this that are help that happen. And I hugely appreciate how far above and beyond you've gone already in doing this. So I'm totally supportive of something like a right of first refusal for the home trust that could be built into that 20-year window.
I couldn't quite hear what phrase
You
you
said a
used. Right of first
right of
refusal?
first
Yeah,
refusal.
or right of first offer.
right?
I would have to say right of first refusal would be off the table because that can, as Jack can probably attest to, that can play havoc with getting other real offers because people see that that's there and they don't want to commit the time and effort to, to understand what the inherent value of the real estate is. So first right of offer, I'm with you 100% with respect to the type of community I'd like to continue to live in for the duration. Right of first offer is probably acceptable in some form. I would probably give that to the home trust anyway. So, but you guys will need to talk about it perhaps with staff or maybe after I'm gone if you want, and make any specific suggestion. But what I don't want to do is encumber the future of the health and vitality of that particular condo unit within the context of the whole project.
Understand?
agreed.
And I personally would say I trust the town and town staff, TJ and Preston, to sit down with Patrick with the proposed plat notes that are in the staff report to work these kind of details out. I think that's certainly totally.
Fair enough. I think. Is it cricket to allow me to ask a question?
Of course.
Because I just don't know. With a lot of the changes associated with affordable housing requirements on the development side, what has the town received with respect to long-term permanent? Are there any into perpetuity? Today?
Space to create
Space to create.
is
Okay.
perpetual.
How about
rental and
how about private side? On the private side are you now requesting that it be 25-year restriction or 20 or?
Good question. Where we require it, it's perpetual.
It's perpetual.
Yeah.
They are perpetual.
Yeah, there's some in Lena Commons, there's some in Riverfront.
Okay. I just didn't know if you had achieved
Roughly
that threshold.
Yeah.
And Wetterhorn,
Letterhorn, yep,
Well, yeah, what, yeah.
that's a whole other deal, but definitely.
What owners in
perpetuity.
What owners to perpetuity?
You're familiar with Letterhorn over here, the modular units, Letterhorn.
Taylor
Yeah,
Foundation.
yes,
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, that's 14 perpetual.
But again, they are all for sale. Yeah, residences.
The only rental stuff is space to create. And that's because it's, Lytec and Jaffa administered, because rentals are obviously really hard to
Yeah, they
do that.
they approve your budgeted numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, if 3 out of 4 are rolling over, they'll want to know, what do the candidates look like and what's the range of the rent, and let's budget that on the low side just in case, or whatever they want. I haven't been through the process with them yet, but that'll be coming soon.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commissioners before I open it to public comment? All right, I will now open it to public comment. We'll start with anyone in the audience who's present. Which should only be one person. Do you have any public comment?
No, but I was just bored tonight.
Okay, thanks for joining us. And then I'll open it up to public comment on the Zoom.
Jennifer Cram.
So, can I jump in?
Yeah.
Identify yourself and your address, please.
I'm Jennifer Cram and I live at 260 South Laura in Ridgway. I have a couple different comments. One is that somewhat related to the previous discussion. I spent some time looking at the HOA documents. I mean, this is a group of condominiums, and we were talking about the 4 workforce units, but they are in the HOA, at least the way I understand the documents, they're sort of treated as one unit and they only get 1 vote, okay? Compared to all 4 of them together only get 1 vote on the board, as compared to each of the other residential condo units and the greenhouse and the restaurant and the office. So they don't have a lot of say. I guess just something that bothers me, because I've looked at condo HOAs before, is I personally always look at it very carefully in terms of, well, who has the most say about things, even though I'm living in this unit and it's a condo and I'm responsible for a certain amount of costs, you might not have much say. And I sort of think that those 4 units don't have a lot of say, but you and the attorney for the city are capable of looking at that and being sure that it's what you want. I also noticed when you were talking about the 20-year thing, I just noticed in the HOA documents, there's one statement that the declarant can allocate areas as common elements for 25 years. So there's a 25-year relationship in this also. So I don't know whether that's going to match up with the 20 years or not, or whether it should. And then I guess I just have a general comment, which you may not have heard, but I'm sort of bothered by the conversion of this whole thing into condo units. There's two expensive condo units, and then there's these 4 apartments that are 1 condo unit, and then there's a restaurant and a greenhouse and an office. So in a way, well, as it said, it's a condo subdivision, which is sort of different than the way it was presented originally, whether it's the way the public saw how it was presented or the planning board saw how it was presented. So in a way, it seems to me now like the residents part is like even more important than the commercial part. And it's not clear to me, well, the restaurant's commercial, but the greenhouse is completely separate. As far as I can see, it's a completely separate unit from the restaurant. So it doesn't have to be tied to the restaurant. And I sort of wonder to myself, could somebody buy the greenhouse and and live in it or do something like that. And then the offices are a separate condo unit, I think also. So I guess I'm worried, I'm sort of bothered by overall. And originally the height was increased, the space was increased for all of this. They allowed the restaurant to extend out onto the patio, but in the end, we're really left with one restaurant and a bunch of condo units, and that bothers me, and I think it probably might bother other people, but so that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? I will now close public comment. Does anybody on the commission have additional questions or concerns?
Is there an elevator?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to ride in it?
No, I looked in the plans, I couldn't find it.
It's right there.
I couldn't find it on the plans.
Elevator and lobby and second floor.
Well, hash marks, I get a headache looking.
It's clearly, it's in the center of the project, but in the rear of the project. It's clearly labeled on level 2 and level 3.
I've carried apartments up the space to create stairs twice now, so it's a very current issue for me.
If there's no other questions or comments, I'm ready for a motion.
DJ, can you pop your motion comments back up again?
I probably can make a motion too, can I?
Sure thing.
I move to approve the application for the Old Firehouse condominium subdivision.
Oh. Sorry, apparently I closed it.
With the following conditions. 1, the applicant shall add a note to the plat stating that the 4 apartments in condo unit D shall be reserved for workforce housing units for a period of not less than 20 years. This note, or second note, shall also identify the reception number of the deed restrictions applicable to these units. 2, the applicant shall confirm to the satisfaction of town staff that the deed restrictions applicable to condo unit D have been recorded with the Ridgway County Clerk and Recorder's Office prior to the recording of the condominium subdivision plat. And 3, the outstanding comments identified in the planning review letter dated January 25, 2024 shall be adequately addressed prior to the condominium subdivision plat being recorded with the Ridgway County Clerk and Recorder's Office.
Do you want to, you think about this first of all, third?
I don't know, I'd go to TJ on how we would word that, if that's a written, a legal binding thing that the first offer, or if we just trust that the applicant would do that.
Can I suggest that you just authorize town staff to work with the applicant to address that potential?
Yeah.
Okay. I direct the staff to work with the applicant to work with town staff to address the possibility of a first offer to,
Don't trust the very good.
well, I don't know that I want to name the entity. I think, you know, to continue it as a workforce housing, to an entity that would continue it as workforce
It's
housing.
fine, it's fine with me, I'll second that.
I have a second, so now I need a roll call vote.
Usually have a discussion.
Oh, hang on.
You can have a discussion.
Do we want to discuss that at all? I just want to be clear that I don't feel like that's putting unjust burden on the applicant. I think that's just a request to work with the town if there's a way to document that that someone that would keep it as workforce housing would get the first offer if the unit were to sell after 20 years.
The town of Ridgway?
Or I'm not naming the entity, the town of Ridgway, the county, Ridgway Workforce, Ridgway Home Trust, whomever. someone that would keep it as workforce housing. I don't think it matters, it's just first offer, I don't think it matters who it is.
Some local nonprofit in support of workforce housing.
I understand.
Yeah.
Is that gonna be,
Is that workable, TJ?
Yeah, can I just clarify a couple of things just for the record and just make sure
Yes.
we're on the same page? So first, the motions were all referring to deed restrictions, and that's how the application was kind of written. And the terms that were in there. I just want to maybe get a friendly amendment to maybe also allow for covenants. That it's somewhat of a technicality, but if we did deed restrictions, that would be a separate document. I don't know if covenants would be restricting kind of the occupancy in that regard. And then also I'm just kind of thinking through it. I'm just spitballing that the way I kind of see this happening is a few different opportunities or options maybe. And I just want to at least throw this out there that what might come out of this is like a development agreement of some sort or a MOU between the town and the applicant or the owner that kind of maybe spells out some of these things. So I don't know if I guess what I'm saying is I want to just be clear that I think I'm hearing what the conversation is, but it could take on a couple of different venues and avenues to get done, not so much just a simple plat note as we have the conversation. So if I'm understanding it correctly, it's direction for staff and the applicant to sit down, kind of talk through some of these things, sit down with legal counsel too, and see the best means to get there, and then proceed how we see fit through that conversation.
Yeah, that clarifies my motion.
Okay, thank you.
And so you think we need a friendly amendment that says that additional discussion would be around the covenants as well as the deed restrictions?
Yeah, my concern would just be that if through those conversations, we all agree that maybe deed restriction isn't the best way to get there, that if, Bo looks at it and says, well, you have to do deed restrictions, now you have to go back to the planning commission to get a new, review if deed restrictions is not the agreed upon solution.
So the motion should have been written differently.
Yes. Well, he didn't.
That's what he's saying, just.
Okay.
Just whatever the appropriate mechanism is.
Yeah, that's
But
fine.
we're not trying to tie it in knots.
No,
I have a question about the motion before I vote on it. So there's a motion on the table to approve it with the conditions as read, but there's also an added condition that the town and the applicant would agree on some type of right of first refusal or right of first offer. And if they don't agree on that, then this is not approved. Is that the way this motion's tendered? No. So if they don't agree, the motion's still approved. Is that-
Yes.
Okay.
We're just trying to build a relationship to move that.
to reform
community
that
asset,
agreement,
to move that community benefit forward.
I think all
right? Because God forbid something happens to Pat and someone inherits this project, then that's been documented. That he agreed to try to offer that to someone.
Well, if
Just
it
to
doesn't
try.
agree, then it's not approved. That's, I don't,
No, I think that the intent of the new condition or amendment, however you want to look at it, is just to open up the possibility for the town and the developer, the applicant, to find a way to continue the deed restrictions beyond 20 years if possible. Not a requirement to do it, just a effort to look at a way to do it.
Well, and I think I stated that, try to work with, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
I think it's captured in how it's stated.
Yeah,
But it doesn't.
But it's not required.
To address your
No.
concern, Jack, it doesn't mean that if it doesn't get addressed, that the applicant loses their approval.
yeah, we haven't put any additional requirements on this.
Yeah.
We made a suggestion.
I'm gonna ask a really harsh question and don't take this the wrong way.
Well, you can't, it's beyond the point where you can ask him a question.
Okay,
You can ask a question to
Yep.
staff, you can.
no, I'm good.
Any further discussion?
no.
Can I get a roll call vote on this, please?
Yes. Commissioner Foister,
Approve.
Bliss,
Approve.
Meyer,
Yeah.
Nelson, Yay. Petroselli,
Yes.
Mayor Clark,
I,
Chairperson Montague.
Yes,
It's unanimous.
thank you.
thank you.
We're all very excited.
Yes.
Yes.
When do we get to see it?
Your excitement is my anxieties. But we want to fulfill those desires you have, the excitement. And when is it opening? We've always said that spring of 2021, which is a nice 90-day
24.
landing strip, right?
Yeah.
24.
24.
Yeah, spring 2024. And we are 86% complete with core and shell. So the building itself is about 86%. What the big remaining amount is very late greenhouse, the arrival of the custom made greenhouse. Was supposed to arrive in August and we'd be building in the beautiful fall weather. And it arrived beginning the Friday after Thanksgiving. And so it was the one project component, and when it arrived, it was easy to assemble. It's like Christmas presents for
Right.
kids. IKEA, and that's so easy to assemble. So that's slowing the general schedule, but the first floor public offerings, there's more than just a restaurant. There are beautiful, highly marketable event spaces that I expect to bring a great deal of business to downtown Ridgway, and a great deal of entertainment options as well when you open that event space. So that work will ensue well into the spring. I think, Preston, you've been very interested in when will the construction fences come, when will it be done? We've got a provisional plan, two-step plan. The sidewalk fences we hope to be able to take down or move in, probably move in because of the work going on. So curious, but we will free up the right of way and the parking spaces, hopefully in early February, early to mid February. And then, I'm sorry, those are for the alleys.
Great.
Sorry, I misspoke. Those are for the alleys. The alley fences are gonna come in early February. The rest will probably early April. And our intent would be to open as early as possible in June.
That's great.
Yeah. That'll be good.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for all the encouragement. It's been a pleasure working with town staff and with the commission and council through the whole process. This is, I think, the last needed approval, so I thank you very much. And hope you all will come by. Be happy to give you the best seat available in the past.
It's a unique project.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Not to worry.
We will now move to work session. Kick off the discussion regarding the scope and schedule of planning projects and Ridgway Municipal Code updates in 24. And I would bet that TJ's got a presentation.
You got me. I do. It's not. Oh, hold on. There we go. Share that. Am I sharing the right thing now? And from current slide, there we go. Are you all seeing that?
Yeah,
Yep.
looks good.
Okay. All right. So, sorry. It's never fun when I'm working on only one screen trying to shift everything around. So there we go. I think I got it now. So in the packet, it gave a memo and I have kind of just this simple kind of presentation to walk through each one, and just by with background, when we did the code update, we identified a whole litany of other items to be considered in the future, and budget cycle last year for this year, council moved forward with some of those, and so there are 4 of them that we wanted to kind of talk through, and I think the goal for this evening is to kind of get some maybe clearer direction, kind of thumbs up on the scope, see if there's some things that we need to maybe do before we dive in, or whatnot. So that's kind of, I guess, just my intro spiel. Preston, do you want to give any other kind of overview?
I think you captured it.
Okay. So with that, I guess what I'll do is I'll just go through each one. It's on one slide each, and just kind of talk through it. And I guess the goal would be kind of have some feedback and some conversation on each one individually. So the first one is to analyze the land use portfolio. You might remember that we've had a few requests in the past year or plus that we're seeking to change some currently industrial or commercial uses, land use, into residential uses or zone districts. And the concern came up that, hey, maybe we need to make sure we're not losing our commercial corridors and our employment centers. And so this project, I would call it pretty simple on the spectrum, that using some GIS and mapping capabilities to do some analysis, tie it to the future land use map and the comprehensive plan, and just make sure, or at least see where that kind of falls, so that we're making sure that there's a balance between land uses, both current zoning and future land uses, that will create a sustainable and a vibrant community that balances economic opportunity with sales tax generation, but also employment and residential centers. So that's kind of the intent there. It would include an inventory and some type of a methodology that says, hey, here's how we would anticipate this looking in being applied in Ridgway, and then that would be discussed and kind of talk through, like, hey, what does that maybe look like? After that, I'm not sure if that would result in anything else. It might just be okay, now we have the information, now we can make more informed decisions on land use questions. Or maybe it does turn into some amendments to the master plan. If it's somewhat significant, it maybe turns into some other opportunities. I just don't know what at the moment, but that's kind of the first approach, kind of and getting an inventory and kind of developing that balance, I think would be our recommendation at the moment. Any thoughts, concerns, comments?
I think this is something we needed to be doing a long time ago, so I'm very much in favor of this.
Agreed.
Okay,
Yep. No arguments here.
next.
All good.
All right. Next one being parking standards. This one is a little bit more tangible, but also a lot more technical. And so what we would be focusing on are actually the parking standards. So how many parking requirements, parking generation numbers by use and things like that. So we would start by looking at the current regulation against best practices and industry standards. And obviously there's a general trend that is reducing the required number of parking, with, there's a lot of stuff in the news going on, or at least in the industry news, of, larger cities and municipalities getting rid of parking standards altogether and go with minimums, not maximums. Or sorry, maximums, not minimums. And the scope of the project would be, there's somewhat of a question in here of, gosh, I didn't spell Lou right. But we would, what is it that we want to look at? Do we want to look at parking requirements? Do we want to look at the location of them? an opportunity to better utilize either off-street parking, shared parking agreements, on-street parking, things of that nature, to get kind of an overall understanding of where people are parking and where those requirements might be a little bit too onerous, to provide on site. And the point being that obviously real estate is getting more expensive. By requiring parking on site, you're taking up valuable real estate that could be used for either commercial square footage or a home, right? That's a component as well. And then also looking at the fee in lieu mechanism, seeing if that's appropriate, if it's the right amount. Do we want to incentivize that opportunity, decentivize it, different things like that. So kind of looking at the whole spectrum of parking standards around the number of parking spaces required by different land uses, and making some recommendations from there. We do have in the approach, I don't know exactly what it would look like. I kind of just flagged a few of these and said, hey, this might require some community engagement. And this is one that, could have some impact on people. If you require less parking, less on-site parking, that means that more people are going to park on street and maybe spill into the neighborhoods. And so maybe some other on-street parking standards that may or may not roll with this, but an opportunity to just engage with the public, to either let them know that this might be happening or get some feedback. If you haven't seen it yet, our approach to these are, hey, we're not sure where we're going to go. We're going to start through the process. We're going to trust the process and start evaluating it, and then use you all as the sounding board and talk through ideas and let the process dictate our next steps. So that's our approach here of, we could do the analysis, we can throw it out there, we can have the conversation and see which way to go.
Great.
Okay.
Love it.
Okay.
Trust the process.
Yeah.
Love analyzing the parking.
I'm sorry, what was that, Jack?
Love analyzing the parking.
Yep.
I mean, just drive through the industrial park, you can see that we haven't handled it correctly. I mean, so it's a day by day occurrence. You see it all over town. I think we need to reevaluate it all in the parking.
Yeah, we discussed it when we revisited the master plan, but now that so much has changed since.
I think we're gonna have some disagreement about what parking primaries are.
I'm sure we will. Not stop this.
Nope. I'd love to disagree. That's why we're all here.
I do have a question. This just popped in my head with this conversation. I wasn't necessarily anticipating on doing this, but doing like a parking study where, I do have here in the approach to include seasonality of parking demand, but it never really included kind of on-site evaluation or anything. Do you think that that's something that would be worthwhile, walking around on a Saturday afternoon during, an event and say, hey, where's everybody parking? Mapping kind of that out, or is this more of a desk kind of review?
Well, we have a parking study we did a few years ago. You're aware of that, right?
No, I'm not. So that's good.
Say a few years ago, it's probably five years old. I don't even know space to create 2018, maybe the floor space.
I was gonna say, when we did the master plan.
Well, anytime there's an event, it's a given that people are gonna park as close to it as they possibly can.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you can't, in my opinion, you can't base your planning on what happens when there's an event. Things get out of hand when there's an event. That's just a given. Build enough parking for every event. You're gonna have huge swaths of unneeded parking all over the place. So
We already had a disagreement.
yeah. and planning for the automobile being the king for the next however many decades is a huge mistake in my mind, and that's probably also just. So, but the need for another parking study, we can talk about it. We should make sure TJ has the study that was done.
Yeah.
As a first step, I'll send you the link to that, TJ.
I think
Yep.
we get started on this and then we'll identify if we feel like
Right.
there's more of a study. I don't think off the
Yep.
bat there does.
Yep, nope, with knowing that that's there, I would say no, we would just validate that. With what we know anecdotally and kind of update some things, so. That
I
sounds
would-
good.
I would certainly like to hear from you about best practices and industry trends.
Mhm.
Especially in other Colorado mountain towns. So, that would, for me, that'd be the best start to get things rolling.
Yep, for sure. So yeah, we'll do that kind of first evaluation and desk review, and then kind of have a discussion, if you will.
And I'm very leery of following the trend of requiring fewer spaces. Because all you gotta do is drive up to Tyrant and see what a nightmare that is.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think luckily we'll ever be at that point, but so poorly planned.
True.
A transportation link with no parking on at least one end and limited on the other.
Yeah, I think we've
It's all
done a better
okay.
job of telling them how.
Oh, yeah.
On both ends.
I mean, they've been talking about putting a parking garage on the bottom of the 7 for 50 years.
Nobody wants to see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, so I already think we're way ahead of Tyrant, so.
And that will go over at Shenandoah where there's already all that affordable housing and the
Right.
fumes sit anyway, because they're gonna develop the Carthage lot for either a hotel or more housing. There won't be parking anyway.
Well, I've actually heard that, so. I think we're already done a better job than Tyrant has, so. We're comparing.
We just
ourselves
don't want to believe until you're.
I think that's hard to say. We have a lot more space and a lot less development.
Can I say next?
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, I thought you had something to say.
No.
Next
time.
time.
Next time.
No. So the affordable housing provisions, we kept section 7.7 blank as a placeholder, because council was looking at how to address affordable housing in Ridgway. And so really, I think this is just going to be more of an exercise, at least initially, of kind of memorializing what's already been discussed. Like we just had the conversation of, hey, what does deed restriction or affordable housing look like? Is it a percentage of each project? Is it, something, do we have a magic number? Do we have a base? And utilizing some of all the work that's been done last year. A lot has been done and good stuff, and then just start memorializing that so that we don't have to negotiate each project with it. From there, that's not where we want to stop with this, but that's the starting point, and then kind of identifying some gaps. And as you're all probably well aware, there is a ton of affordable housing regulations and guidance coming down from the state in previous legislation, and this year won't be any different. There's a whole slew. So kind of being nimble and identifying how to set the town up for success using those funds and those programs. So starting by memorializing what's already been talked about and agreed upon in the community, and then kind of identifying the gaps and the opportunities and how we can fill those. So that's this is probably I would suspect the highest priority, but it might be the simplest because a lot of the work has already been done and we just need to get it in there somehow initially. So at least that, and then we can, second phase of it, if you will, or the second iteration would be, all right, what are the gaps and how do we fill them?
Great.
So would this address some of the stuff that council was actually talking about regarding things like inclusionary housing?
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about, the planning commission actually addressing that and passing it up to council? Or something like that, or just setting it up instead of council?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That'll all be encompassed
Okay.
or included as part of these conversations.
Awesome, I'm looking forward to that. That's
Did you hear that? Do you agree with that?
Sorry, what was that, Preston?
I was just asking if you agreed with that.
Oh, yes, yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
This
Yep.
is probably number one on my list, so yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
And then the last one, I think, yeah. Accessory dwelling units, you know, again, this is somewhat related to the affordable housing component. But looking at that use in particular, it's prevalent in town, and from my standpoint, that's a 2 thumbs up thing. But you know, it's been in place for a while, and the trends are maybe shifting a little bit, and so this one is more of similar to the parking. Hey, let's evaluate what's out there, see how the development trends are happening in town. Is it meeting what we want it to? And then go some best practices or other means of implementing it. So for example, right now, ADUs are a set number, whether your house is 5,000 square feet or 500 square feet, whether your lot is 5 acres or quarter of an acre, the requirements are the same. And I don't know if that's correct or not, but those are the kind of things that maybe we should be talking about. What does accessory mean? Are there some other measurement components? You know, stuff about the standards with them, parking, design, access. Does it have to have a separate access? Can it come through? Right. There's just some of those things. What zone districts? So I don't know that we really have any preconceived notions of what this should be. I think what our approach would be is come again similar to the parking. Hey, here's what your code says. Here's kind of where the industry standards are going. Let's talk through it, right? So that would be the first phase, would be gathering all that information, having a work session, and then this one too, probably including the public in some capacity on what may change. You know, and
Do we have to?
I have a question. Do we have any idea how many ADUs we have in the town?
I was gonna say that the
Yeah.
point bullet that says inventory current ADUs is
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. You know, you drive around town, you see a lot of them, but I don't know if there's an inventory. And I do think that would be really helpful to kind of see some of that data of how is that development pattern going. So maybe this one is kind of, you know, like we were talking about, you don't start with a traffic or parking study or analysis, but maybe we do start with kind of this big inventory of where are things, how are they currently being implemented. You know, there's a lot.
We should be able to inventory pretty easily with the water and sewer.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
Good point.
Building permits over the last few years, and then, but yeah, there's ways to try to hone in on a number.
well, I think we all kind of know the town. I mean, it's not that big a town. When we could start with building permits and then we could make a guesstimate of what's really out there pretty accurately.
Yeah.
I bet there aren't very many. I bet it's this small number that are trying to get by under the radar with it, but I could be wrong. I mean, we need to walk around and see, and my guess is public works guys have ways of, you know, just based on usage, whether there's a, you know, they see the meters, they see who's using what.
I'm not sure water will get us there, but I think we're pretty smart. We'll figure it out.
I think water gives us more information than you think, because there's standards for how much water a household uses.
You might be right about that. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that walking the streets also is a pretty accurate way. I think the real one is parking.
Are meters required on ADUs?
No.
Way Sherm used to do it by wood smoke coming out of the wood stoves. That's the way he used to count.
Well, that doesn't necessarily do it, because I have a wood stove in my shop. Brian Strickler down the street has a wood stove in his shop. It's, you know,
Change.
yeah. Well, no, those are very old. Those aren't changes. Those are baseline. The changes have been that there are fewer people who have wood stoves.
Yeah.
Yeah, my shop has it.
But no, I think we need to at least do our best at creating an inventory and then drive around town and see what, if we can find ones that aren't part of that inventory. I personally, I'm really proud of the fact that we've allowed and had an ADU program for longer than most communities, size. And they should really be a component of our workforce housing solution. And so anything we can do to make them more, the last thing we want to do is make them more onerous to do. We want to make them easier to do.
One, I think we should increase the allowable living space based on the lot size.
Well, I think we should incentivize them any way we can. I think it's the easiest solution to our problems.
I totally agree.
And I think the other key thing on this is determine if ADUs can be used as short-term rentals or not, because I think we've had some pretty
I think it's
vivacious discussion on that previously, and I think that's a big one.
Question, I mean, these are all important. It's like, oh, which one do you make most important? But I'm asking because I don't know. Do we need to do number one first as the macro level before we dive into the others, which are more micro?
I'm assuming that question was to me.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Preston and I talked about this a little bit too, and what we would recommend, because each of these can go down its own path and its own rabbit hole, and some might be simple. Some we might just do this analysis and say, hey, you know what? Everything's working actually great. We just didn't realize it. And so that might not be the case, but some of them might be some very simple code updates or simple things, right? Others might require more. So I guess what I would suggest is we start with all four and kind of do this broad brush approach, and maybe we start with two and then present those and we talk about those two, and then kind of the next month do the other two. But our team is working kind of behind the scenes on all four of these so that we can start understanding which ones are going to take more time, and then we can dive in, because I'd hate to dive into parking and we get way into the weeds and into the details on it, and then we don't have any time for the others that might be even higher priority, or we could just get some low-hanging fruit. So I think this is one of those things that I would recommend. Let's start with all four of them, start the analysis, start understanding what the impacts are going to be, and then as we start charting the path forward, we could say which ones are going to be the priority, which one's going to take more time, more effort, or which might be low-hanging fruit.
So I feel like you're doing the bulk of the work on this, and if you're willing to take it on in that way, let's go.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do this with a special meeting, or we're gonna add it on to our normal meetings?
I think we had these on our normal meetings.
Until we find out that it's not, we need more time.
Yep.
I agree, because we're usually willing to add an extra meeting if we need to get something done, but so far, at least we'll be having meetings. We have a reason to have meetings.
And I would say, if there's a scheduled meeting and nothing on the agenda, we should dive in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't leave a meeting unutilized. Yeah, I like the idea of starting with just the current status of each of them, so that then, like you said, we can figure out low-hanging fruit versus easy versus, oh my gosh, this is gonna take a lot of time and a lot more information.
I think, let's talk about, I think, TJ, what do you think is the most difficult? I think it's gonna be parking. Probably the next difficult is gonna be affordable housing. Just my take, is that the way everyone else feels? Yeah, I think it's gonna be tough.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some that are going to be difficult for different reasons, right? So parking is going to be difficult because it's going to be very technical and analytical, and trying to find that balance of the right approach. There are going to be others like the affordable housing that's going to be very tedious because the landscape is changing every day right now. There's so many tools at your disposal, talking through each of them and kind of going through. And so I think each of them has its own potential for its own struggles.
Preston, will you move that participant list so we can see this discussion topics?
Someone had their hand up, that's why.
Jennifer.
Don't worry, little Kate.
She's been quiet. Do you have anything to add, Jen?
Yeah, I'd like to add something. Thank you. I felt kind of like the ADUs is something that could be worked on along with the others. It seems like the other projects will probably take longer. And I thought that, and I felt kind of strongly about the ADUs because of the short-term rental part of it. I feel like that needs to be changed. And that's something that would be really, really easy to change. And I know there's more to it than that with the ADUs. I definitely would like to know how many ADUs we have, but I feel like that's pretty easy and something we can do along with starting the other projects.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
think
that
it's
sounds good.
hard to multitask on these things, though. I think we have to tackle them one at a time, and trying to do two at once is gonna be discombobulating.
Well, I agree with John. I think staff should pick the easiest ones and let's knock them off. It's just my approach. It's just,
I think we just pick one and start, because we don't know what's gonna be easy, what's not.
I think if TJ's willing to introduce them and present it, let's see how it goes.
Yeah,
He's the one doing the work.
yeah, I don't think, personally, I think we probably have if you were to poll the commission right now, we might have a pretty broad feeling of which.
What's the most
what's
important, yeah.
most important.
Yeah.
Ideas. So let's take advantage of our expertise that we have in our contract planner and give him the floor on that.
I think they're all.
Full speed ahead, TJ.
I wanted
Sounds
to,
good.
if it's appropriate, in your document that's in our packet, the last group is Group 9, general comment suggestions. The first one is consider having the PC approve master plans. Currently, PC recommends to council. In my experience, that's not true. That I've always said that the planning commission gets the approval role of the master plan, and then council ratifies that approval. But I don't know, I could be wrong, but that's the way it was. Certainly it was in the early, I've been involved in pretty much every master plan since about 1990. So early on, I know that was the way it worked. Maybe the 19 one was different, I don't remember. And it's a nitpicky point, so I apologize if it doesn't matter, but I believe the state regs say that planning commissions have the authority to approve new master plans, and then the council can either ratify or not.
Isn't that the way we did it in 2019?
I think so.
Yeah.
So a minor point, but I just wanted to raise that since it stuck out to me. But I really like what you've given us here, TJ, in terms of these groups. Yeah. And I'm excited to get started.
And somebody took some good notes in there. I was like, wow, I wouldn't even have remembered that. Thanks.
That's in the papers, guys.
Yes.
Do you need anything else from us on that?
No, what I'll do is we'll start diving in. I don't know. We'll try to get something kind of on the calendar, on the agenda for the February meeting. It might only be one, right? I'll have to just look at staff capacity and doing some of the research stuff, but we'll start diving in and try to have something at every meeting here. And the idea being, we're not going to go farther than we think we can and get some direction, because what I'm hearing is we don't really know where to start, but we don't want to be spending so much time on everything. We kind of want to figure out the course and then start focusing efforts. So that's our charge initially, get kind of that broad brush understanding on all of these, and then we can give you some recommendations on path forward, and then we can talk about, hey, these are probably the low-hanging fruit. Let's do these, let's knock these out quick, or other whatever that approach is. So we'll keep moving ahead that way.
Thanks.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I think we're all excited.
Okay, we're moving on from work session to the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of the October 31st Planning Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Russ moved, John seconded, I guess I need a roll call vote.
Okay.
One last roll call vote.
Okay. Commissioner Forster. Approved. Liz. Aye. Nelson.
Approve.
Petroselli.
Aye.
Clark.
I,
And Chairperson Montague.
you missed him.
Were you there?
Absent.
Oh, you were absent.
Yeah, so yes, abstain, nice job.
Nice eye.
Great,
So-
motion passes,
Okay.
we're on to other business, any updates, anything on the horizon?
Just so you all know, Preston, will you share that article I shared with the council about the snow thing? It's a pretty sobering.
It's gonna stop snowing here.
Well, the gist of it is that some studies come out that they published, I think, in the journal. Some hydrologists in the West have found that there's a tipping point, an average winter temperature when it gets above 17 degrees. Snow starts disappearing much faster and there's no recovery. There's no recovery. So the takeaway of the article is that in some places we're already over that. I don't know about our region, but I know we are one of the warmest regions in the West.
Several months.
So if we get past that, we're actually looking at the potential of having winters without snow. And if that's the case, we need to really seriously reconsider our growth policies. But I just think it's a start to the discussion. It's a little frightening, but we need to be having these discussions. Similar point, at the Mountain Towns 2030 Summit in Vail last fall, I found out about a group called Climate Mayors. And there's mayors from all over the country who've joined this organization, trying to take positive action at the municipal level on climate. I joined that organization at the time. And then I found out that Aspen Ideas is having a climate conference in Miami in March. And the Climate Mayors Organization will pay for me to attend. So I am attending for 3 days in March, the Aspen Ideas Climate Conference in Miami.
I wonder if that doesn't also signal another quick look at the landscape regs that I know we recently did, but maybe not with enough mind towards drought. Like once we're done with these four we just listed, if we maybe look at some of those and again, and just quickly be like, we did this a couple years ago, but it wasn't quite as dire because I think it might be prudent.
Well, and along those lines, Tanya, who joined us for the Water Smart Workshop in Junction this past fall, just emailed Preston and I about that exactly. We need to probably, those of us who went to that workshop need to get together and talk about takeaways. TJ attended as well, and maybe reconsider some of our goals from that, which was landscaping in general and landscaping.
Because it's a big deal to be requiring something that maybe isn't appropriate, right? We don't want to be doing that.
Right.
It's so complicated though, because if we don't allow adequate watering of even a xeriscape, we become a desertified town. Now maybe we're heading that way, I don't know.
We're probably further behind the curve than we know.
I think there's an elephant in the room is upgrading our water system and modernizing our water system.
And that's why we're going for grants to pipe the ditch. There are things that we're working on.
And the other one was to let people be able to see what they're using to check in the app thing.
Yeah.
I would love to go to all of these conferences. Is there a way to zoom in on some of them?
I don't know about the Aspen Ideas climate thing. I couldn't find out.
Yeah.
It's, I'm getting a complimentary.
4 Seasons, sweet.
Well, I
We should all
don't
come.
know where I'm staying, but my registration is complimentary. It's $1,000 for the general public. So I don't know what sort of. I'll certainly be bringing a lot back to report on.
I would zoom if it's
Yeah.
available.
I think it's actually aspenideasclimate.org or something, but I'll find out what you.
Anything else?
Nope.
Anybody? Preston? You don't want to say how much you've missed us the last couple months? With that, the meeting is adjourned. And I don't have my hammer.
All right, well, since you didn't ask me, I missed hanging out with you all once a month for the last few months too, so.
Thanks, TJ.
Have a wonderful evening and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Yeah, you TJ.
Question for you. I think I already know the answer. But full disclosure, I was